Welcome back to my video series working through the Sonic Pi tutorial. In this video, section 3.3, Stretching Samples. Here we go. Stretching samples. Now that we can play a variety of synths and samples to create some music, it's time to learn how to modify both the synths and samples to make the music even more unique and interesting. First, let's explore the ability to stretch and squash samples. Sample representation. Samples are pre-recorded sounds stored as numbers which represent how to move the speaker cone to reproduce the sound. The speaker cone can move in and out, and so the numbers just need to represent how far in and out the cone needs to be for each moment in time. To be able to faithfully reproduce a recorded sound, the sample typically needs to store many thousands of numbers per second. Sonic Pi takes this list of numbers and feeds them at the right speed to move your computer's speaker in and out in just the right way to reproduce the sound. However, it's also fun to change the speed at which the numbers are fed into the speaker to change the sound. Changing rate. Let's play with one of the ambient sounds, Ambi Choir. To play it with the default rate, you can pass a rate opt to sample. Like this, sample Ambi Choir rate 1. Let's listen to that. Control R. Sampy. Did you mean sample? I sure did. This plays it at normal rate 1, so nothing special yet. However, we're free to change that number to something else. How about 0.5? Let's listen at 1 again to get the comparison. And now 0.5. Whoa, what's going on here? Well, two things. Firstly, the sample takes twice as long to play. Secondly, the sound is an octave lower. Let's explore these things in a little more detail. Let's stretch. A sample that's fun to stretch and compress is the Amen break. At normal rate, we might imagine throwing it in a drum and bass track. However, by changing the rate, we can switch up genres. Try half speed for old school hip hop. Alright, 0.5. And run. Oops. Rate, 0.5. And run. Doesn't exactly sound good, but I kind of hear what the tutorial is talking about with old school hip hop. Now the tutorial claims if we speed it up, we enter jungle territory. Alright, let's try that. That's fun. Now for our final party trick, let's see what happens if we use a negative rate. Ooh, what will happen? I could see that turning into something kind of neat. Whoa! It plays it backwards. Now try playing with lots of different samples at different rates. Try very fast rates, try crazy slow rates. See what interesting sounds you can produce. Well, first off, I want to try it negative and really slow. I always forget the leading zero that you need. That's too slow to even be really heard. Let's crank it up to like 0.1. Took a while. I mean, I guess that's what we would expect. How about forward at 0.1? Alright, now let's go for the really fast ones. What about 100? I don't know if you'll even hear it. Yeah, it's just a little blip. Not even a blip, it's just not much. Let's try it at 10. Alright, that was fun. I'll go into a bunch more of these maybe on another video, but let's call it for now. Let's move forward now with the tutorial. Pardon me 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. A simple explanation of sample rate. A useful way to think about samples is as springs. Playback rate is like squashing and stretching the spring. If you play the sample at rate 2, you're squashing the spring to half its normal length. The sample therefore takes half the amount of time to play as it's shorter. If you play the sample at half rate, you're stretching the spring to double its length. The sample therefore takes twice the amount of time to play as it's longer. The more you squash higher rate, the shorter it gets. The more you stretch lower rate, the longer it gets. I'm not sure I like this analogy because strings get tight when you pull them. I mean, the springs get tight when you pull them out. But anyway, let's continue. Compressing a spring to increase its density, the number of coils per centimeter, this is similar to the sample sounding higher pitched. Stretching the spring to decrease its density is similar to the sound having a lower pitch. Okay, I can kind of see that now. The maths behind sample rate. This section is provided for those that are interested in the details. Please feel free to skip it. As we saw above, a sample is represented by a big long list of numbers representing where the speaker should be through time. We can take this list of numbers and use it to draw a graph which would look similar to this. There we have a graph. You might have seen pictures like this before. It's called a waveform of a sample. It's just a graph of numbers. Typically a waveform like this will have 44,100 points of data per second. This is due to the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. So if the sample lasts for 2 seconds, the waveform will be represented by 88,200 numbers, which we would feed to the speaker at a rate of 44,100 points per second. Of course, we could feed it at double rate, which would be 88,200 points per second. This would thereby take only 1 second to play back. We could also play it back at half the rate, which would mean 22,050 points per second, taking 4 seconds to play back. The duration of sample is affected by the playback rate. Doubling the playback rate halves the playback time. Halving the playback rate doubles the playback time. Using a playback rate of 1/4 quadruples the playback time, and using a playback rate of 1/10 makes the playback last 10 times longer. So it's a divide and multiply, or multiply and divide thing. We can represent this with the formula new sample duration equals 1 divided by the rate times the sample duration. Changing the playback rate also affects the pitch of the sample. The frequency or pitch of a waveform is determined by how fast it moves up and down. Our brains somehow turn this fast movement of speakers into high notes and slow movement of speakers into low notes. This is why you can sometimes even see a big bass speaker as it pumps out super low bass. It's actually moving a lot slower in and out than a speaker producing higher notes. If you take a waveform and squash it, it will move up and down more times per second. This will make it sound higher pitched. It turns out that doubling the amount of up and down movements, oscillations, doubles the frequency. So playing your sample at double rate will double the frequency you hear. Also, halving the rate will halve the frequency. Other rates will affect the frequency accordingly. That was some good math. Alright, that's it for this video.